Hello and welcome for joining, and thank you for joining us to our webinar. Please give us a moment while we try to connect to Facebook Live. Congressman, you can go ahead and get started.
Good evening, everybody. I am Congressman Mark Takano, and I am excited to be leading this town hall, this virtual town hall. I just want to say that I am excited about returning to Washington on August 23rd and 24th to vote on the 3.5 budget reconciliation resolution. And I'm also eager to get to work as chairman of the Veterans Affairs Committee on marking up the portion of that reconciliation resolution, which will be assigned to my committee. Together with the $1.2 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill, the budget reconciliation will be acted on sometime at the end of September, the beginning of October, around that time frame. And it will be transformational for our nation. It will be part of a critical suite of legislative actions that will position our nation well for a sustainable recovery as we lift ourselves out of this pandemic. I'm eager to take your questions, so I'm going to keep my remarks brief, and we'll touch on hopefully as many questions as we can tonight. So let's hear the questions that are on your mind. The first question is from Ken. Ken is asking, my kids are now back in school. What mandates are in place to ensure their health and safety? Well, Ken, you might have heard that the governor has ordered that all schools, the governor and state superintendent have ordered all schools to implement mask wearing among students attending our public schools. In addition, the many school districts, not all, are taking actions to have the staff and the faculty and the staff of the schools vaccinate. I can tell you that the local community college district, the Cal State system, and the UC system are also issuing mandates for staff to be vaccinated. And there is also a mask mandate that is also being ordered by the governor as well throughout the state in our public schools. I applaud these actions. I encourage schools and counties and all cities around the state of California to be cautious, to back the spirit of the CDC guidelines, which has urged that people, regardless of their vaccination status, wear face masks inside of buildings and in gatherings of larger than 50 people. The Delta variant is very contagious, and it has infected vaccinated individuals. Although, let's be clear, these vaccinations, regardless of which vaccination that you receive, have proven to be effective at preventing death and serious illness. So anyway, I can just know that there are measures in the state of California that I believe are intensive and rational, and they make sense. Next question is from Louisa. What are you doing to ensure that the United States, shares its vaccine supply fairly with poor countries so that this pandemic can end sooner than later? Louisa, thank you for that question. You are spot on that it is in the interest of the people of the United States for the rest of the world to be vaccinated. We need to stop the replication of this virus. And so long as there are hundreds of millions, maybe billions of people who have yet to receive this vaccine, that is many opportunities for the COVID-19 virus to replicate. And each replication brings with it the risk that a new mutation will emerge that could be equally as dangerous as the Delta variant, or be more dangerous than the Delta variant. It could evade the effectiveness of the vaccines we have to date. We fortunately have vaccine technology that will enable improved vaccines to be able to intervene with these new variants, but it takes time for those vaccines to be vetted and be actually available to folks. So for that reason, I have signed on to a letter with my friend Jan Schakowsky to enable and facilitate the manufacture of vaccines for distribution in countries that do not yet have it. I have also signed a letter that was led by my colleague Raja Krishnamurthy, who I forget how many of us that have signed the letter, but we are urging some action within the reconciliation package that we're voting on to make sure that we provide funding for vaccines to be used globally. So Terry asks, what is Congress going to do about assisting with student loans? Well, you should know that already the federal government has taken action to pause the payments on federally backed student loans. And President Biden recently just expanded or extended that pause to January 31st of 2022. So there is currently there was a pause, and that pause has been extended, meaning that that the payments from federally backed student loans, I underscore federally backed student loans, have been suspended for the moment. Congress does have before it numerous proposals on some form of student debt relief, and we'll be working through those proposals during the markup of the reconciliation bill, and following our passage of the reconciliation budget resolution, we'll be looking at just what resources we have to address the student debt burden that too many students in our country are facing. Let me just add that related to this, I've been somebody who has been a leader in Congress on reining in the predatory for-profit colleges that put students into debt. Most of the defaults on federal student loans come from students who attend for-profit institutions, and we were very successful in the American Rescue Plan, actually, in inserting a provision through the portion that the Committee on Education and Labor has jurisdiction over, in terms of revising the federal rules that make it easy for-profit colleges to put students into debt. So we have taken action to prevent students from getting into a debt through one of the loopholes in the law that for-profit colleges exploit. But stay tuned. We'll be, undertaking this issue in the coming weeks. Kevin asks, what measures are we taking to reduce the spread of the Delta variant? Well, I'm very pleased that at the federal level, one of the first departments to act was the Department of Veterans Affairs. Several weeks, like 2 or 3 weeks ago, I received a call from Secretary Dennis McDonough, who told me that he was announcing that all Title 36 employees, those employees who directly care for our veterans as healthcare workers, would be mandated to get the vaccine, and they'd be given so many weeks to do that. I received a recent call yesterday from the Deputy Secretary, who said that they had received clearance from the Office of Personnel Management to expand the number of employees under the VA who would be mandated to get the vaccine, to get vaccinated. More than that, President Biden has ordered the federal workforce to get vaccinated. The alternative to not getting vaccinated is eventual termination if you can't show, a legitimate religious exception or a health exception. Some people do have legitimate health reasons for not getting vaccinated. We're seeing a number of governors around the country, a number of private sector businesses that are also requiring that their employees get vaccinated. We're seeing increasing numbers of school systems putting forward this requirement. I think the more that that government officials at all levels and government bodies at all levels show leadership in this regard, the better. I am supportive of reasonable vaccine mandates. The vaccine is our most effective way to stop the spread of the COVID-19 virus and dangerous variants from emerging. So the more people we get vaccinated, the better. We've been improving, but we still have far to go. Please urge all of your friends and family and loved ones to get vaccinated. Be patient, be respectful, but we all need to be firm and hold each other to account. This is important for all of us, that we get every person in our community vaccinated. So Carrie asks, please update us on the status of the infrastructure bill, its approval in the House of Representatives. Well, in my opening comments, I did talk about the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill, which passed the United States Senate recently. The Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, has made it very clear that the House of Representatives is very much interested in passing this bill, but only in tandem, only concurrently with the $3.5 trillion Budget Reconciliation Act. And that is why I'm going back to Washington, D.C. on the 23rd and 24th of this month, which is to vote on the first step of that budget resolution, which is to approve the resolution instructing, I think, 12 congressional committees, including the committee I chair, on how much we will spend on investments to lay the groundwork for a sustainable and a sustained economic recovery, of building back better of our nation as we lift ourselves out of this pandemic. So that vote on Monday, those votes on Monday and Tuesday of the third week of this month, the 23rd and 24th of August, that is the beginning of the process of budget reconciliation. The committees like mine will be marking up the bill, getting into the details of how we will spend the $3.5 trillion into the specific line items. And once we have that bill marked up from the various committees, it will come to a final vote in the House and the Senate. It's called final passage, the final passage of the Budget Reconciliation Act. That will happen in tandem with the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill. This is a long answer, it's kind of technical, but I just want you to understand the time frame, and it's kind of confusing. But end of this month, 23rd and 24th, the budget reconciliation resolution, and then the final passage of that Budget Reconciliation Act will occur sometime at the end of September, beginning of October, in conjunction with the infrastructure bill. Now, understand that infrastructure in the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill is your traditional roads, bridges, highways, rural broadband, what we think of as hard infrastructure. There is still some of that, some types of that infrastructure in the $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill. But the reconciliation bill will also contain investments in human infrastructure. And by human infrastructure, we mean specifically the care economy. We found out how important our caregivers are during this pandemic. Our caregivers are often female, often inadequately paid, and work under, I think, less than desirable conditions. We want to raise the dignity of that work. It is dignified work, but we want to raise the ways in which people are compensated. We're looking to create an environmental conservation corps for young people to address the needs of our environment, address global climate change. And we want to address elements like the PRO Act, which would enable the strengthening of our nation's labor unions. So I can't enumerate everything that's in that reconciliation bill, but rest assured that it contains very, very important investments for a sustainable recovery from the economic hardships that we've suffered during the pandemic. From Alice, the faith community is anxious to see a strong response to the climate crisis. What more can we do to ensure the passage of the climate spending in the 3.5 budget bill? Well, Alice, continue letting your representatives know how you feel. There's nothing like public sentiment to define what is possible in terms of what Congress gets done. The American people, Alice, have already spoken. They already, in huge numbers, want to see address what we've seen recently occur with extreme weather events, whether it's a drought, whether it's forest fires, whether it's record heat in parts of the country that don't see the kinds of temperatures that we've seen already past the summer, flooding in different parts of the globe. So the manifestations of the sinister manifestations of global climate change, I think are becoming more and more noticed by more and more Americans. But it's important for citizens to continue to amplify their concerns by participating in various organizations, by communicating with your representatives. But I want you to know that my office receives tremendous comments and tremendous demands and asks that we act. I'm fully committed to supporting what's in that reconciliation bill as it regards regarding addressing global climate change. Next question, please. Here we go, from Keith. What legislation is being considered to protect voting rights with respect to redistricting? Keith, there are two very important pieces of legislation. One is HR 1, which is the For the People Act, and HR 4, which is the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. HR 4 is a strengthening and a restoration of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. It was weakened by at least two Supreme Court rulings, which have made that act less of an effective tool at preventing unfair redistricting, which prevents voter suppression and denial of basic voting rights. HR 1 contains, it's a large bill, and it contains many provisions. In my mind, some of the most important parts of HR 1 have to do with sunshining dark money that flows through various types of IRS Internal Revenue Service accounts, nonprofit accounts, 401, 401 this, 401 that, the 501, 527, 501. There's all I can't remember all the different ways in which the tax code has been exploited in terms of how what are really political influence dollars masquerading as a sort of nonprofit sort of contribution. We need to sunshine that money. All voting citizens need to understand who's trying to influence an election. That shouldn't be a secret. The other parts of HR 1, which are important, that relate to fair redistricting and really pushing back on the practice of gerrymandering. Many of you who've been following what some of the states are doing in terms of some of these, some states are passing very restrictive laws on voting, making it very difficult for people to register to vote or to vote by mail. So HR 1 would address many of these concerns. So those are the two bills that have already passed the House of Representatives, and that we need some way to find a way to get the most important provisions through the Senate. Those discussions are happening among senators, and it's my own opinion that the reconciliation bill and the infrastructure bill were two big pieces of legislation that was taking up a lot of time. The momentum on those two bills is such that I think we're almost clearing the plate, so to speak, of those bills, and we can spend more time on finding the pathway for the most essential elements of those two bills to make their way into law. I do feel that that passing these two bills is really important. So Judy asks, is there any way to do away with the filibuster? Yes, Judy, there is a way to do away with the filibuster. It requires simply a majority vote in the Senate. The senator, and for those of you who don't know what the filibuster is the requirement that a supermajority vote of 60 senators must agree to proceed to consider a piece of legislation on the floor of the Senate, and 60 senators must agree to stop debate and move on to actual voting on passage. Nowhere in the Constitution, nowhere in our Constitution is there mention that it should take 60 votes for the Senate to act on legislation. A two-thirds vote is required to ratify a treaty. A two-thirds vote is required to convict somebody who is impeached by the House of Representatives. But on ordinary legislation, what's known as the legislative filibuster is simply a procedure that was adopted by the Senate by majority vote. What's adopted by the Senate by majority vote can be rescinded by majority vote, or can be altered, or it can be amended. And currently there are 50 Democratic senators who, if they all voted for a change in the interpretation of Senate rules, along with the vice president's vote that would break a tie, that would be sufficient. So I believe that the filibuster must be abolished. It is a fundamentally undemocratic procedure. And when you consider that the Senate itself is unrepresentative of the United States, that states with far less population have an outsized voice in the Senate already, and then to subject the Senate to then a supermajority, this is a fundamentally undemocratic and unfair. And the 21st century is now the time to do away with a procedure that was never, ever envisioned by our founders, and was probably the result of an accident, a mistake, an error in the Senate records. So anyway, the answer is yes. I've just told you how it could be done, and it should be done. I think this is Lesia. The question from Lesia is, how can we make sure that care jobs are essential in this economic recovery package, and the care and workforce, largely minority and women, is no longer treated as an afterthought? Thank you for that question. So, what's usually been non-controversial in the history of our country, whenever we have economic downturns, a recession or depressions, is to use the federal government's resources to put people to work through infrastructure jobs. And that usually entails building roads, bridges, highways, railways, mass transit. It's a quick way to make high-paying jobs available, well-paying jobs available to people who otherwise would not be working. And it helps lift us out of economic difficulty by getting money into the hands of many people who will then spend it as consumers and create a virtuous circle of government spending, consumer spending, and a revitalization of our economy. You're correct that infrastructure jobs are largely male. They're skewed toward male workers. And that is why I think it is so important that we pass the $3.5 trillion Reconciliation Act. And because in that act, both for childcare and for elder care, and actually care for our disabled, we know that these workers tend to be female. They tend to be paid way less than, say, somebody who's, welding or operating, an operating engineer, a carpenter, and this largely female workforce needs to be respected, and we need to add dignity, respect the dignity of the work that this workforce performs. It is vital. It is essential. We found out how essential it was during this pandemic. So this is one of I think one of the most important parts of the reconciliation bill that we must insist stays intact. I also would say that we need to get the civilian or the environmental conservation core also through for our youth. And there's so much more in this bill that relates to healthcare. Senator Sanders has insisted on expanding Medicare benefits to include vision, dental, and hearing. I wish that we could do more. I wish that we could actually bring the care of the eligibility for Medicare down to, say, age 60 or so. We're also going to address prescription drugs. How are we going to pay for these expansion of benefits to Medicare? Because we are going to insist that Medicare negotiates for the price of the medication that it purchases in bulk, and to use its purchasing power to lower the cost of drugs for everybody. So there's, and I've just given you just a few tidbits of what's in this bill, and it's no wonder that both of these bills are very, very popular with American people for what the American people know is inside these bills. Lenora is asking me about a complaint that was filed by the American Civil Liberties Union against the Riverside County Sheriff's Department regarding inappropriate use of COVID-19 funds. Is there any further information? Lenora, I don't have any further information. I did glance at the complaint. The Riverside County received close to or more than $500 million in American Rescue Plan dollars, on top of CARES Act dollars. The city of Riverside and Moreno Valley, the cities of Riverside, Moreno Valley, Harupa Valley, and Paris also received American Rescue Plan dollars. And it was money much needed by all of these local governments to be able to deal with the economic stresses of on their budgets by the COVID-19 pandemic. Our school districts and our universities also got aid, and for our businesses, our small business. Let's not leave out our small businesses through the PPP program, our restaurants and other small businesses, independent medical practices. The government helped a broad swath. The federal government helped out a broad swath of the American people. It's very, very important that these dollars be accounted for, that spending of these dollars conforms to what is allowable. For the American Rescue Plan, that means a connection to COVID-19 related stresses. So for instance, the county is administering a program to help renters who to make their rent payments. I mean, it's obvious that if COVID-19 meant hardship for a low-income family, they lost employment, they lost income. A breadwinner was down for several weeks, or there was a death in the family. I think it's clear that large numbers of Americans need programs like our rental assistance program, and that was administered through the county. That's a very, very, I think, common sense expense. If there were expenditures that were not allowable by the sheriff, he should be held accountable for those. And I await what any possible review of this complaint might turn up. But I certainly would hope to see that all officials, regardless of whether they're city, county, school district, universities, that they're held to account for what is allowable spending and reasonable allowance of spending. Richard asks, can you provide an update on your comprehensive bill, the PACT Act of 2021? Richard, here's the update. So the PACT Act, for those of you who don't know, is a comprehensive bill to deal with the toxic exposure of our veterans. Many of you know about our veterans in the Vietnam War. They were exposed to Agent Orange, and it took many decades to establish that certain illnesses, actually many illnesses, had a direct link, a direct connection, causal link to their exposure to Agent Orange. Our Vietnam veterans had to suffer far too long, had to fight far too hard to get the medical care that they should have gotten much earlier, to get the compensation for the disabilities that they suffered much earlier. And I'm determined that we do not see history repeat itself with the current generation of veterans, mostly from the Iraq and Afghanistan conflicts. And many of those veterans were exposed to burn pit smoke. President Biden himself believes that the cancer, the rare cancer that killed his son Beau, was probably a result of his prolonged exposure to the burn pits. The president himself in the Oval Office told me that Beau was billeted, within a few 100 yards, maybe not even 100 yards, maybe 50 yards away from one of these burn pits. So it weighs heavily on the president's heart. Across all the major veteran service organizations, whether it's the VFW, the American Legion, Disabled American Veterans, Paralyzed Veterans of America, Vietnam Veterans of America, Iraq, Afghanistan, Veterans of America, all of them came to me saying that their top priority was to pass a bill that would address burn pit exposure. I told them that I would do that, but I wanted to make sure that we left no veteran out, that veterans that were involved in other conflicts, who were exposed to radiation, who were exposed to other types of exposures, that we needed to take care of them as well. So, Richard, what I can tell you is that under Secretary McDonough and a very, very pro-veteran administration of President Joe Biden, that they announced 3 new presumptive illnesses related to Agent Orange, and more recently, 3 presumptive illnesses related to burn pit exposures. This latest action of the burn pit exposure presumptions, I believe, is going to add momentum to the legislation that Senator Tester and I are moving through the Congress, and that we're negotiating with our Republican colleagues. I believe that 2021 is going to be the year that we get the Honor Our PACT Act into law. And what it will mean is many presumptions being added to the list of presumptions related to the to burn pit exposure, a revised and streamlined claims processing, and an overall, I think, improvement in the way that we, that we must, an improved way in which we pay the veterans, the respect we pay our veterans for their service. The cost of war does not end when our troops come home. The cost of war continues. Our responsibility as American citizens continues as we take care of the veterans who continue to suffer from toxic exposure. So thank you for the question, Richard. Linda asks, what does your 32-hour work week bill do? Linda, my 32-hour work week bill very simply amends the Federal Labor Standards Act, which was first enacted into law in 1935. It was a New Deal piece of legislation. That legislation established the 40-hour work week. Before the 40-hour work week was cemented into federal law, it was not uncommon in America for people to be working way in excess of 40 hours. And really, the drive for a 40-hour work week, limiting the 40-hour work week, limiting the number of hours worked to 40 hours, was led by industry. It was led by Henry Ford. It was one of the first persons to pilot experiments. He's discovered that the optimum productivity way back, probably more than 130 years ago, 120 years ago, was the 40-hour work week. And it's important to know that we didn't have a 2-day weekend. Really, for most Americans, the idea of a weekend, that didn't become really culturally cemented until really the passage of the Fair Labor Standards Act, which set a 40-hour work week. You might be interested to know that our financial markets used to operate 5.5 days a week. There was a 6th day of trading, and that actually changed. So Linda, simply what my bill would do, the 40-hour work week, what it says now under the Fair Labor Standards Act is that you work 40 hours a week, subject to the minimum wage, and anything over 40 hours, you get overtime pay. My bill would start overtime pay after 32 hours. And so the idea being that that there's plenty of very, very, I think, powerful conversations going on at different sectors of our workforce about shortening the work week from 5 to 4 days a week. My bill would not prohibit people from working more than 32 hours, nor would it take their hours away. But given our current situation, our current work environment, our current workforce environment, I believe if we were to implement a 32-hour work week, most employers would continue to ask people to work that fifth day those hourly workers during the fifth day, but they would be earning time and a half. They would essentially get a 10% raise, and it puts workers and unions in a position to negotiate upward the hourly pay that they have for the 4 days they're working at regular compensation. So, look, the tech firms, companies like Kickstarter are piloting 4-day work weeks. These are not 4-day, 10-hour days. These are 4 days at 8 hours of compensation with no reduced pay. This is happening in the white collar tech sectors and other white collar areas. What my bill does is it opens up the conversation about a shortened work week for hourly workers as well. I believe that we need to be having these conversations in tandem. It's exciting and amazing and wonderful to see that tech firms such as Kickstarter and Google are moving in this direction. Microsoft Japan experimented with a shorter work week without a reduced compensation. More recently, Iceland released a pilot study on about 2,000 workers, 2,500 workers. They didn't reduce the work week to 32 hours. They reduced it by, I think, 3 or 4 hours. And what they discovered was that productivity was not diminished. And what that means is that we, for many, many, many jobs in our country, could reduce the hours, keep pay constant, but not see a reduction in productivity. Many, many Americans, I think, are interested in this, especially coming out of the pandemic. People of all ages, but especially, I think, young people who are already earning lower rates of pay are exhausted and are looking for a better work-life balance. And there are many, I believe, benefits to employers as well. But I'll save that for another question or another day. But I am quite overwhelmed by the response. I know that there are many people concerned and have strong feelings in the negative about this. But I think if we just, I think everybody calms down and understands that this won't happen overnight. That this is a conversation happening politically, culturally, and economically, and socially in our country. It's an exciting time. Karen is asking me what issue keeps me awake at night these days. Karen, I want to say that overall, I remain optimistic about our country. I think my optimism is probably very similar to the optimism that our president, Joe Biden, expresses, that he believes that America's best days are ahead. It's the optimism, frankly, that I learned from my late colleague, John Lewis, the representative from Georgia, a man who saw, I think, very, very dark days. He lived during an era of, let's face it, very repressive Southern state governments through Jim Crow and segregation and interposition and nullification, state governments clinging desperately to preserve racist segregationist policies. And John Lewis had his head cracked open by a billy club as he was attempting to cross the Edmund Pettus Bridge near Selma, Alabama. And I have had the honor to walk with John Lewis twice across that bridge in commemoration of that time that he had his head split open. And I think we need to reflect on the examples of people like John Lewis and so many others. Bob Moses, who recently passed away. If you read his story, just Google his name and read about him and the risks he took to register voters in Mississippi. I don't know that I stay awake at night, but if I would identify my biggest concern about our country, it's whether or not our democracy is going to survive. It is the challenge that Abraham Lincoln, in his speech at Gettysburg, challenged all of us as Americans to rise to meet. And that challenge is that for us, the living, not those veterans, not those soldiers who had given their lives, whose bodies were in the coffins stacked up behind them at Gettysburg on that bloody, bloody battlefield. He said, "It's us, as up to us, as it's up to living, those of us who are still alive, to devote ourselves to that which all the dead soldiers had given their last measure of devotion to, which is to not allow the government of the people, for the people, and by the people to perish from this earth." And so what I mean by that is the tremendous disunity we see in our country caused by misinformation and disinformation on our social media platforms. 75% of Americans get their news from social media. It's not being used responsibly by some political leaders. We're seeing very deceptive messaging and news coverage, which purports to be news, by certain news outlets, and some of the media is irresponsible. The tragedy that so many lives could have been saved had we had more responsible leadership, more leaders stepping up and saying the truth about vaccines, saying the truth about mask wearing. But we are divided in so many ways in our country. I believe that President Biden is on the right track in terms of moving the reconciliation bill and the infrastructure bill, that he insisted that the infrastructure bill be bipartisan, but to not let bipartisanship be the altar at which we worship entirely. Yes, it's important, and it is a big, I think he gets a lot of credit for moving through the $1.2 trillion bipartisan, the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill in a bipartisan way. But he's also showing leadership by demanding that we move forward with the $3.5 trillion American Families and Jobs Plan, which is the reconciliation bill. I do believe that the fundamental economic struggles that most Americans are facing in the wake of this pandemic need to be addressed. It is a necessary part of bringing our country together, but it's not all of what we need to do. It's necessary to address the economic suffering, but we have much more work to do as Americans to come together and to ensure that we strengthen our democratic institutions, repair the breach, to restore, there should not have been a loss of faith in our local election officials. It's a shame and a tragedy that honest local election officials are being intimidated, being threatened with violence. This must stop. It's inexcusable. I have not always won my own elections. In fact, I can think of two very hard-fought elections I was involved in personally that I lost. And I'll be honest with you, I look back on it, it was a good thing in my own personal growth that I lost those two elections. We need to restore democratic culture, democratic norms, but I believe we can get past this moment. And if John Lewis can take a blow for voting rights and remain optimistic by the progress of our country, who are you and I to do any less? We have a moral obligation, you and I, to be optimistic about our country, to be optimistic about our democracy, and to be optimistic that we're going to build a better America. So with that, I'm going to have that be my last question. And I look forward to seeing you in the community. I'm going to try and get out much more as we try to open up opportunities to meet each other in person. I've missed all of you. I know some of you haven't missed me, but I've missed all of you.